Hello, this is Professor Donna Byrne at William Mitchell College of Law, and this is the online module for estates and trusts on unitrusts and income and principal allocations. This module accompanies pages 630 to 648. I did not assign all of those pages. Don't panic. You don't have to read all of the pages that I didn't assign. Okay, so what are we going to do here? We're identifying some sources of tension between the income beneficiary and the remainder beneficiary. We will describe unitrusts, look at how they eliminate that tension between the beneficiaries, and we'll explain how they make the trustee's job a little easier. We'll look at the relevant authority. Okay, allocations. This is one of the ways that tension arises. So consider our basic SpongeBob trust. Income to A for life, remainder to B. The trust owns, say, a rental apartment building and a stock portfolio. Nice income-producing assets. We know that that means that A receives the rental income and the dividends from the stock during A's life, and then when A dies, B receives title to the building and also all of the stock. Now, what if the trust has to pay some property tax? Does that come out of the income, or should it come out of the principal, like by selling off some stock? That's one question. And then when A dies, what if there's some income that just hasn't been paid out yet? It's sitting there, it's ready to go, we just haven't sent off the check. Does that still go to A's estate, or does it go to B? These are allocation problems, right? Does something coming in go into income, or does it go into principal? And something going out, what does it come from? The trustee has to decide this if the trust hasn't made it really clear. Now, the Uniform Principal and Income Act provides useful guidelines. For example, the trustee's compensation is entitled to be paid half from income and half from principal, if the trust doesn't tell us something different. All right, your authors have provided at least parts of the Uniform Principal and Income Act from 1997 in your casebook, and that's some of the pages I did not assign. You need to know that this statute exists. You must remember to check whether your state has adopted it or something similar, and you should be able to identify these potential allocation issues, but you're really not responsible for the details of the statute. Now, there's another source of tension, and that's the kinds of investments. Some investments don't really earn income. Their great potential is that they will grow in value and you have more there when you go to sell it. Those investments are really nice if you're the remainder, right? If you have the remainder interest, there will be more value there when it's your turn than there is now. On the other hand, some investments earn a great deal of income but do not grow much in value. Now, money market funds are an example of an asset that doesn't grow in value. They are managed to maintain a constant share price of $1. That's a good investment for the income beneficiary, right? The income keeps coming, it's guaranteed, well, it's almost guaranteed. It's very predictable. We don't care about growth. So income and beneficiaries and remainder beneficiaries have really different preferences. The trustee is caught in the middle. Trustee has a fiduciary obligation to both. And the types of investments that you choose as a trustee can really sway the balance of the value towards one or the other. So you have to be impartial in choosing investments. They should be balanced, and unless the trust says something else. You can always draft around these. Okay, here's our big fix. The wonderful thing it's the Unitrust. A Unitrust pays the lifetime beneficiary a fixed percentage of the whole trust value each year. That could be less than the actual income. If the trust is earning a lot of income and that fixed percentage is less, let's say maybe you set it at 4%, and the trust actually rakes in 10% in income. Now that would be a lot of income, but it's possible. 4% of the total value of the assets and the income. On the other hand, this could be more than the actual income, right? In some time periods, you might want to be invested in stuff that's just going to grow in value. There wouldn't be much trust income. Doesn't matter, right? Because the lifetime beneficiary gets a percentage. So the cool thing about a unitrust is that the lifetime beneficiary doesn't care what kind of assets the trust owns, as long as the general value goes up. And the remainder beneficiary doesn't care what kind of assets the trust owns, as long as the general value goes up. So the trustee can manage the trust for total return, and no one's going to criticize that you had too much growth stock and not enough income stock. Now, so those issues go away, right? That tension between income and principal goes away. All of the other issues we've seen are still there. You still have to diversify. You still have to make sound investment choices. Okay, so where do we see unitrusts? Well, we see charitable remainder unitrusts, CRUTs. Remember we talked about a charitable remainder annuity trust in an earlier video, a CRAT? Well, a charity got the remainder. That's the charitable remainder part. Same thing here. A charity gets the remainder. On the other hand, now we have a unitrust instead of an annuity. So here, the lifetime beneficiary gets a fixed percentage instead of a fixed amount. Okay. There are tax rules that prefer these for income tax purposes and also for estate and gift tax purposes. This is how you have to set things up to get the charitable deduction when you leave a charitable remainder. Throat's getting dry. Okay. Let's take a look at In re Heller. Now, Jacob Heller left property in trust to pay income to his wife for life or $40,000 a year, whichever was greater. She's supposed to get all the income or $40,000. So at least $40,000 goes to Bertha each year. And then the remainder to his kids. Now, his kids were not her kids, right? This is a second marriage. The trust did quite well. And for example, from 1997 to 2001, just before this case comes up, Bertha was receiving $190,000 a year. That represented all of the trust income. So what happened? In 2001, New York enacted a new statute. It enacted the Uniform Principal and Income Act. Ho ho! And that included a provision that allowed trustees to make the trust into a unitrust. Now, who were the trustees? Here's the fun. At first, it was Jacob's brother Frank, who was not a beneficiary of the trust. But he died in 1997, and then, under the terms of the trust, the trustees became Jacob's sons, Herbert and Alan. And remember, Jacob's kids are the remainder beneficiaries. So Herbert and Alan are remainder beneficiaries, and they're the trustees. Stepmom Bertha is the income beneficiary. Well, in March 2003, Herbert and Alan said, hey, we should make this into one of those new unitrust things. And we should make that retroactive to 2001. That was as far back as you could go. Now, if the trust were a unitrust, well, actually they did this. And that meant that Bertha now only gets about $70,000 per year, 4% of the trust assets. Okay, now, little sidebar. If you set up a unitrust, you can use any percentage you want. This is the default value in this statute. What does that mean? It means she's going to have to give some money back. Ew. Yeah, she wasn't happy, and her daughter was really unhappy. Sandy Davis was Bertha's daughter from a first husband, and a guy named Harry Rosenberg, I think, who may have been a baseball player. Anyway, so think about the choice of trustee here, right? If you're advising Jacob, do you really want to tell him to put his kids in this position? Right? He put his two sons in the position of being trustees over money that was to benefit themselves in conflict with how it was to benefit their stepmother. And even though they're the ones with the power here, litigation is not fun for anybody. So this, you can kind of see the tension building here. All right, if this were a conventional trust, there's already some tension about what kinds of investments. But now they're making this election that's going to really cost Bertha quite a bit. But on the other hand, if this had actually been a Unitrust from the beginning, all the beneficiaries would have had the same preferences. A Unitrust is one big pot, so everybody's happy if the trust does well. Or it's like a rising tide lifts all the boats, right? Income goes up, remainder goes up. Boats. So under the Unitrust election, 4%, Bertha would only get $70,000. So you can figure out what the trust itself was worth. Almost $2 million. And that means her $190,000 was actually 11% income. That's pretty good income return. But probably that meant there were stocks that weren't growing very much. Okay, so can our trustees do this? Does it matter that they're beneficiaries, first of all? Well, the court said, this legislation doesn't restrict beneficiary trustees from making this election. Prior law did. So we know that the legislature would know how to say that, and they didn't. So that means it's okay. Moreover, these trustees, although they were beneficiaries, were not the only remainder beneficiaries. And they do have a fiduciary obligation, not only to Bertha, but to the other remainder beneficiaries as well. Okay, so they can do this. Can they make it retroactive? I mean, that just seems so harsh. Well, yeah, actually they can. The statute gives trustees the authority to choose the starting date. It can be before the current date. It can go back to when we changed the law. And so, yes, they can make it retroactive. In fact, the default value sort of is that a trust would be a Unitrust from the get-go, or at least going back as far as possible. So it sucks to be Bertha here. All right, what bugs you more? Does the Unitrust concept bother you, or is it the fact that they changed this after the fact? Actually, for that matter, what do you think of the Unitrust idea? Do you like this idea? Does it make intuitive sense? Is it too complicated? Post your thoughts on this on Blackboard. So where have we been? We saw two kinds of tension between a lifetime beneficiary, an income beneficiary, and a remainder beneficiary. One coming from allocation issues, and the other coming from investment issues. We saw that there's a Uniform Principal and Income Act that gives trustees guidelines for allocation. And we saw that the Unitrust alternative eliminates both kinds of tension between income and remainder. May give the beneficiary more or less than the actual income. Okay, review question. Cypress or Cypre?